Now we're going to have a WWDC panel. Like Barry said, this is going to be very much like the discussion that you would have down at the pub, I hope, but up on stage. So moderating is me, Sean Woodhouse. I run Itty Bitty Apps and part of Mantle Group, and we've put this spread for everybody here, so thanks for coming. And we've got starring Kira Fleming, who is a chapter lead, I think is the right title, right, at ANZ. Mm-hmm. We've also got Megan Ephron, a senior iOS developer from Seek, and Renaud Lienheart. I don't know whether I'm even pronouncing that properly. You can tell us how. Oh, yeah, good. From Drawboard. So thanks for being part of it. Barry, this slide is the next one. That's it. Cool. Okay. I can sit down now. Cool. Okay, so I just need to get my notes out. So to get you guys talking first, I just want to sort of go through and ask you, like, what were the highlights for you, Kira, from DubDub, like all the announcements?
Okay, I think the lock screen looks really good to me. I think it's really good to take the bits out of the watch and bring it onto the phone and everyone can use it. I think that's wonderful. Interested to see it on an always-on display on the future iPhone.
Maybe in a future device.
Yep, that will be wonderful. The other thing I thought was really good was it was only mentioned during the keynote, I believe. It was the to lock down your security and privacy settings, and generally it was like a family violence kind of situation. I've done a little bit of work in this space, and it's like really, really needed and really, really valuable. And I feel like for the amount of code it was, that makes the biggest impact. And I think that is actually the biggest announcement from my perspective. For
a lot of people. I was going to bring that one up as well. Megan, for you, what was kind of some of the highlights for you, both in terms of maybe being a user of the platform, but also sort of working in the industry?
Yeah, it's funny that you say user, because my most exciting one was probably... So I'm not a CarPlay user at the moment, and nor am I a car enthusiast, but I thought CarPlay, it looked beautiful. I am kind of curious to see what the experience would be like.
Well, it's funny that you say it's beautiful, because I know Jared was like, who wants to sit in front of this thing? And maybe beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right, Jared?
Yeah, well, it is customizable, I think. Like, they kind of really quickly went through it, but you could kind of see the dashboard change a little bit. So I assume you can take widgets out if, it's a bit too busy. But I kind of like the idea that you would see your own things and then the passenger would see, maybe they can control the music or something. And it looked beautiful.
I think on that, one of the comments that was made was, are you going to rely on your phone being in the car to get the dashboard to come up? Now, obviously, the car makers had to have a default dashboard. So when you bring your phone in, then all of a sudden it's going to be something completely different. And so that might be a little bit jarring for people who might be like, oh, crap, I left my phone in the house, or for your partner that might not have an iPhone, and then all of a sudden they've got a completely different experience to you. Might be quite interesting to have that bipolar kind of car experience when you jump in there.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I'm also kind of curious to see which car manufacturers are going to actually pick it up as well, and how long that's going to take. Because it's like, let's say Mercedes, they have their own unique style. I just can't imagine them putting this like full screen Apple display dashboard in their cars. Like I kind of wonder like how that's actually going to play
how
out.
they're going to buy into it. So I think they did put a slide of all the manufacturers that had announced they were going to adopt it, but maybe a little bit like deprecating devices. Your car will be deprecated, and you'll have to wait for the next model before you get the ability to do those kind of things.
Yeah. Another one that I really liked, which is a bit controversial, was the desktop view. So that's the one where you can you can put your phone on the laptop and you can kind of see what's underneath. And that would have been really useful for me I thought it would be really useful for me a month ago, because I was trying to demo to my team VoiceOver on iOS. You can't do that on a simulator. So I had to join Zoom on my computer and join Zoom on my iPad and flip the camera and then kind of straddle my iPad to show everyone what I was doing on my phone. And I was telling a colleague, this would have been so good for me. And he was like, well, if you're using your phone though as the camera, what are you going to actually demo on? And I realized completely right.
A test device, right?
Exactly. And I think from a tech perspective, we can't really use any of the new stuff because we support iOS 13 at Seek. So all of the new iOS 16 stuff, it's really cool, but in 3 years we'll be excited about that. So I'm really excited about all the Swift stuff, like all of the any and some that they're kind of working with, and also all the Swift concurrency stuff, which we're only just starting to use now.
So what you're really excited about is the stuff that was announced 3 years ago that you can use now?
Exactly,
right,
yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Renaud, any particular highlights for you?
No, I'm going to second the lock screen. I think for everyone that hung out with me for the last couple of years, which is nobody, I was complaining a lot about the lock screen. It looked quite dated. It's been there since iOS 7. I never liked it. I never liked the local notifications really. And the fact that they finally refreshed it is a breath of fresh air. And especially live activities, I think, feels like somebody finally thought about, okay, what do push notifications really solve? And do we need push notifications? And for a lot of use cases, actually, like sports and deliveries and whatnot. And, I made the mistake of subscribing to an electricity wholesale provider that has every half an hour a specific price for electricity. And I would love to have that on the lock screen, because how many times do you have to unlock your phone and launch an app to just glance at something quickly? You lose 5 seconds to do that. Like, you can put that on your lock screen and have that in real time for things that are really important. So it's going to really save, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, a lot of time. It's going to be really neat once we see what it's capable of, and especially the fact that it's tied to focus modes, and we can have a work focus with the calendar, let's say, with the meetings coming up during the day. At home we have something else. Really great stuff. But overall, I think what I really loved about that WWDC is not necessarily something specific, but more like the vibe of it. Of the fact that there seems to finally, it's been like a couple of years now, but there's finally a vision. It seems that Apple is finally converging towards something. Like, they have all their pins in a row, and on iOS, on macOS, on iPadOS, whatever you think, they finally have something underlying it all where they're converging towards something. We don't know quite what it is yet, but they are very confident in what they're doing, rather than throwing things at the wall like a few years ago.
Do you think they know?
Exactly, no. If you think about the fact that last year they introduced universal control, and you could have your cursor on the Mac and go to the iPad. That was neat. You're like, I'm loving it. And eventually they shipped it, and that was great. Now they announced external display for iPadOS, where you can obviously have an external display for iPad, and you can move your cursor. And that's probably using the same technology. You have to move your cursor to the display to start using it. So I'm pretty sure it's based on the same stuff. But what if that external display was on your face? Right, like you can see that there's an extra. If you extrapolate all of that stuff, they are building the technology stack to allow other things coming down the pipeline, and they're not revealing all the cards yet. But it's pretty obvious where they're going. But it's pretty great, and I quite like what I see. So again, the vibe of it, the confidence they have of showing everything on each of the platform, like Stage Manager. Obviously, is going to be something very relevant for whatever we're doing next. So they, rather than a few years ago where iOS 10, iOS 11 were releases that were quite they were waffling about. We didn't really know what they were doing. Like there's a feeling of like they're going somewhere, and I feel confident of being in that ecosystem now again because of that.
When I saw the Stage Manager thing, the first thing that came to my mind was an extended desktop, right? So you've got your monitor there, you're still looking at it, but with your AR glasses, you've got things off to the side. So it seemed like it would be a natural progression, and it's probably why they've got it on Mac OS and iOS and whatever OS comes out next.
Yeah,
I feel like we're seeing an Apple that's addressed its tech debt. They might have got rid of a lot of that UI kit code. They're building on SwiftUI themselves, which they weren't doing earlier on. They weren't doing it in the 13 days. Certainly not. I think, this confident Apple is achieved from that technical uplift, right? They're getting rid of Objective-C code everywhere. Every single release, you can see it changing. So I think this is what we're seeing, and that's amazing, right?
Yeah, part of that was the slide, right? That everybody talks about. The slide that says Swift and SwiftUI is the best way to develop apps moving forward. We're still obviously going to support that, but the fact that they say it outright now is really great for people that embrace Swift and SwiftUI, not necessarily for people that don't really like it, but at the very least they have now a strong statement that says this is where we're going, and if you don't like it, you better find something else. But at the very least, they have somewhere they're going, and we can follow that same line.
So I did want to ask the panel about SwiftUI, because obviously, clearly, that's the future of app development across iOS and macOS. Megan, how much is Seek? Have they already adopted SwiftUI? What's your plan for transitioning to doing more of it if you're not already?
I'm a bit sad to say that we don't do any SwiftUI at the moment. We're definitely thinking about it. We've been thinking about it from a little bit before this WWDC. We do have a couple of questions that we are trying to figure out, like, for example, what kind of architecture do we want to use? So kind of doing a bit of research and experimentation around how that might look, because we already have an architecture that exists really well for us, and we kind of want to know if what we have that exists in UIKit can kind of fit into SwiftUI somehow, or if we need to change it a lot. And the other question that we have is, how do we test SwiftUI? Because SwiftUI at the moment, the views kind of seem like a little bit of a black box. Like, I don't know in unit tests how I can assert that I've configured my button to call a view model, or maybe I want to present an alert and I chained that to the right view. So I think, like, some of those things I don't really know how that works, and unit testing or just quality in general is our absolute number one priority at Seek. And so we kind of need to have those questions answered before. I know you can kind of do some introspection, and maybe you can, like, dig into what the UIKit view is under the hood and test that possibly.
So there is a lot of magic that happens from what you declare using SwiftUI to what's actually generated at runtime. And I guess there has been bugs in SwiftUI or sharp edges that they're addressing, but that implementation might change over time as well. So that does make it a little bit hard to kind of do those kind of assertions. Kira, I know ANZ has an interesting story around this. Do you want to tell us a little bit about their journey?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm probably not the best person to talk about it. There's people later on that can give you some more information. So we are using SwiftUI for new code, except for about 10 cases where it doesn't really work for various reasons, either performance or it's missing something or what have you. We're lucky in this regard that our minimum is iOS 15, so we've been able to use it in places. So yeah, it's been okay. I mean, like, I'm thinking, to Jared's point, on the Android Jetpack Compose side, there's absolutely no issues, and we're going to 100%. I don't know if we'd get there. with iOS just yet.
I see some shaking heads here in the audience.
Yeah. It might be the same thing where it'll be years before we get something that is suitable for 100% just yet.
Renaud, Drawboard is quite a complex native iOS app, iPad app specifically, or is it iOS as well?
iPad first, but also
right.
iPhone.
Okay, yep. Is it all SwiftUI?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, we have created a PDF editor from scratch starting 2 years ago, I believe. So SwiftUI was already a thing, and we made a huge bet on SwiftUI. We basically said we're going to write everything in SwiftUI from the start. It might not be ready then. It was still iOS 13 and all that, but any piece of UI kit we write is going to be tech debt for the future. So we're just going to bet that Apple is going this way, that's going to improve, and that's going to deliver the promises that it had. And it has paid off handsomely for us. By the time the app was ready, which was a few months ago now, so let's say 6 months ago, our minimum deployment target was iOS 15, and it's been great. The speed at which we've been able to deliver features has been amazing. We have very limited problems with it. We obviously have to have some. We have to backtrack to UIKit a few times, but it's very limited, and that's totally doable. So it's not like a big deal. If it works, then fine. And so we bet our future in SwiftUI, and that's been great. And I just want to add the fact that junior developers coming out of uni right now, they're already not familiar with Objective-C. Objective-C is way in the past for them. They don't even know what it is. But UIKit is becoming like that as well. So if you have not transitioned to SwiftUI yet, you might have more and more difficulty hiring juniors out of uni. I'm just going to, it's something I noticed lately. We have a coding exercise, and most of the exercises we've got back have been in SwiftUI now. So it's, be ready to future.
We've had the same as a consulting company. It's an interesting challenge because there's a lot of legacy UI kit code bases that we need people to be able to work on. So, but we do appreciate that people are coming out of university or learning iOS and macOS, iOS app development using SwiftUI. So we've got to train them up in UI kit as well. One thing I did want to ask you about was you made a comment before about the live activities or whatever the widgets are on the phone. And it seems like Apple is progressively opening up ways for our apps to provide experiences beyond just that single screen experience on the phone. You know, there's widgets, there's Siri integration, there's app intents, things like that, shortcuts. Has it really taken off yet? Like, again, I'm looking at all the apps that people are working on here, and maybe some people in the audience. Like, it doesn't feel to me like it's got a lot of traction, but there's a lot of potential. Does that make sense, Megan? Like, has Seek sort of explored any of those things?
We talk about it. We used to actually have a Today widget, and it was causing us a little bit of pain because we kind of implemented it at a hackathon, and then we forgot it existed, kind of, and then we'd only really remember it existed when it's crashing in production. So we pulled it out with the hope that we'd use a new widget, and we just never really got around to it. But we talk about it a lot, especially around dub time. I think there is a lot of potential, but I'm a firm believer in, when you actually use this stuff, it should really provide value, and you shouldn't just use it just for the novelty of having it there. So yeah,
Well, I think that every Apple Watch app ever, right,
Yes.
except for the health stuff.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Kira?
Yeah, at ANZ, quite keen on widgets. We'll see if anything comes of it. I love app intents. I think it's going to be amazing if people can find them. That was previously the problem. We'll see how we go. I mean, we were watching Dub in the office today, and someone kind of said, what do you use Siri for? Set a timer. That's about it. So I don't know. I have hope still, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, imagine saying to Siri, "Hey Siri, transfer Kira $5 for lunch," and just do it. It could get your phone number out of the thing, pay ID. There you go. There's an idea.
It would be amazing. Oh, thank you.
In 4 installments, for $1 every 2 weeks, right? Like,
Renaud, is that a factor for you? I guess with your app, maybe not as much.
Not really. The only thing that's really relevant to us would be Stage Manager, where people might use multiple windows more often. So it's a pro app, right? So a lot of people open a technical drawing, open notes, and try to do both at the same time. So will Stage Manager and will external display support increase the adoption of multi-windows in our app? We don't know, but probably. So yeah, that's a feature that's really relevant to us.
I was interested also, Kira, you mentioned that you were watching the Dub videos at work. How are we all collectively kind of finding the time to do this? Do people's companies normally provide them with a bit of extra time to catch a video here or there? Did you get up super early in the morning to watch the keynotes? Like, Megan, what's your approach to kind of staying up to date? Because it's really challenging.
Yeah, I actually did wake up for the keynote this year. I usually do. In previous years, we didn't watch it all together as a team, or the last couple of years. We just kind of watch it async and we'd have discussions about it. This year, we actually are in the middle of our hackathon at Seek. And so all the iOS devs, we wanted to watch Dub instead. So about 10 of us, we've all been watching the last 3 days from like 10 to 5 over Zoom. We've just been playing sessions. And yeah, it's been really amazing. Like, we'd watch and then we'd kind of stop and have a discussion about it and talk about how it applies to us. It's been like quite amazing, actually.
Nice, yeah. That's great.
Does a developer app support SharePlay? Can you do that with SharePlay?
It might. We
I
didn't
can tell
try.
you, it supports it very poorly.
There you go.
We tried. Apologies to anyone remote that tried to join our stream. It did not work at all.
Kira, but there was a bit of a push today to let your team watch those videos as well, or at least for a period of time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's really important. Yeah, so we got together and first time we'd seen each other in a very long time. Some people hadn't seen in person ever. Got some pizza. It was lovely, actually.
It is one of the things I think a lot of us really miss is this time of year. It's getting cold. It's winter. Head over to San Francisco, boiling hot, San Jose, whatever, hang out with a whole bunch of like-minded people, normally from Australia. And it was just a great week. And I think it's something that a lot of us really miss. And hope that maybe some other people here who didn't get to enjoy that experience do in the future. Renaud, do you have any sort of fond thoughts about or memories of WWDC that you can repeat here on stage?
I mean, we met at WWDC, right? So
Yeah, that's a good point.
no, I mean,
Beyond that experience.
Okay, yeah. No, DubDub. So for those who don't know, I used to work for Apple. So DubDub, I always went to DubDub as an Apple employee. So it's not like I mostly hung out with people during the day. I presented one year, which thankfully was not recorded in video, just in audio. But yeah, no, like you can feel just, especially like I'm going to talk about the point of view of working at Apple, right? Like you work all year at your desk and you don't necessarily realize how much of an impact you have on people, on developers or whatever. You just do your work and you file, fix your radars, work on the features. And when you finally go to DubDub and you share like a day with everybody else, that's when you feel really the energy. And it's pretty amazing to feel like, oh no, like I've done something significant and everybody's super excited and it motivates you for the rest of the year so you can go another year and then really feel like, okay, well, they're going to wait for something more next year and I can't wait for them to see what we're doing. It's I remember that fondly. So that DubDub experience, like I'm sure the Apple employees nowadays I still have that feeling of like, even if it's just a keynote, but having that feeling of like, okay, people are getting really excited about what we announced. So it's all worth it. All the sacrifices, all the hard work, and it's going to deliver great apps and great products to a lot of people over the world. So that's why they're doing it.
And so every year you go through that cycle of building up towards DubDub. It really is the main event for most of the software developers at Apple, right? Yeah.
Like it gets. You don't think about it until like a month or two before, and then suddenly everybody's getting quite excited, and things have to be fixed really quickly, and yeah, like you, it's a really really exciting time. And then like we say, file your radars or file your feedback really quickly after the WWDC because like there's a very limited time for developers at Apple to pick up these feedback reports and then try to fix it before the GM has to come out. So, but also like right after DubDub, everybody takes a vacation. So there's like a 1 to 2 weeks buffer where everybody is like completely exhausted, takes a vacation, and then comes back in July, let's say, and then starts picking up all the bugs. So you have a couple of weeks to file all your feedbacks, and then like people will try to fix that before it's over.
I'm just thinking about some of the kind of weird and wacky things that were announced. For me, that room scanning API was like, wow, God, they've gone really down a niche path there. And obviously it's really useful and practical for a lot of scenarios for interior designers, and IKEA, I'm sure, will use it. But it really seemed quite niche. Are there any kind of, Megan, were there some things that you sort of thought, wow, I'd never expected that SDK?
I'm actually a bit surprised that they introduced the weather services now. I feel like that's going to be the API that everyone uses for their like intro to Swift projects,
or their interview tech exercise thing.
Yeah, exactly. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that was that strange. I think that was it for me.
Kira, any sort of thoughts? Anything that just sort of came out of the blue that you sort of thought that you just weren't expecting?
I can't think of anything tech. Just the wackiness of the videos and the sheer amount of puns that they're loading in the videos every single time. It was honestly too much today.
They're certainly ramping it up.
Per minute is just like more than one. Yeah.
Yeah, there actually was a moment during the keynote when he went through the corridor and he was like going really fast, but then it was like slow motion and he kind of just went like this in his hair. That was an absolute highlight for me. I wasn't expecting that.
I thought that the tracksuit was pretty big highlight for me. I think everybody wants to know where to get one. Renaud, anything in particular for you?
No, not really. Just little bits that were picked up after that, but nothing announced during the keynote. But just as a note that I have, right, something that I'm really happy about, very obscure, but like it's always been my belief that the OS vendor is responsible obviously for the experience of the users, and so far on macOS has done a poor job at installing and uninstalling apps, because a lot of the apps you install, I'm sure, have some kind of like install assistant that has to install a launch plist on the file system so they can have something running in the background. And we've done that on Reveal, right, where you have to like really, it's really gross code where you have to actually write a file, open that file, send some message to a daemon that says, hey, I've installed the file, so now look at it. It's awful. And I'm like, why haven't they fixed that problem? And apparently, I haven't looked at the details, but finally this year they have an API that allows apps on macOS to register launch agents and launch daemons pretty much natively without having to do all these gross hacks. So that's going to simplify a lot of these apps that have to have some kind of background component to run, I'm pretty sure from the App Store directly, right? So all the stuff that allows you like, oh, I need your admin privileges to install some kind of helper applications or whatever. That's supposedly, again, I have to look at the details, that's supposedly finally going to be fixed. And I'm like, finally, that should have been there like 20 years ago. I mean, so yeah,
I think also from the user experience, I heard that it will tell you when an app has done that, which is a little bit more obvious than just, hey, give me your password, I got to do some stuff.
But also I think there's a system preference pane as well that lists properly everything that runs at startup and all that. So anyway, somebody again like took the time to think about, okay, what is gross about macOS nowadays? Let's fix it. Let's finally do something that solves that problem, because the app installation experience on macOS is not great. So this is the kind of little touches that I like to see. It's like, okay, even in 2022, after like 20 years of macOS, somebody's still saying, you know what, we're going to fix these foundational things and make it, better for the future.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, we might just take a couple of questions from the audience, I think. I can run out. If anybody's got a question, stick your hand up and I will... Okay. Do you want... Yeah, I'll repeat it. Keep it short so I can repeat it. I won't remember it otherwise. Right, yeah. This is another thing I was going to mention, was Reality OS was probably the elephant in the room that wasn't discussed, but we all know that Apple are building the technologies towards an augmented reality. And so does that, or even with the announcements that were made, so they've made some more progress in that area. Does that influence you in technologies that you choose to adopt? Now, also considering that we're talking about ANZ, Seek, and Drawboard here effectively. So, Renaud, is there anything like Drawboard might be an interesting thing? Is there any AR kind of future there without giving away any sort of roadmap plans?
No, hopefully PDFs will not do AR anytime soon, because PDFs are already... Please don't. No, so I'm going to repeat myself, but just like the multi-window stuff, hopefully you're going to be able to put a window in your glasses. That's pretty much it.
So you'd be looking for more OS support rather than sort of in-app support. Okay. Megan, searching for jobs in augmented reality?
Yeah, maybe if you kind of pan your phone, you can see all the jobs laid out.
Well, maybe you could have a scorecard for all the people in the audience for the businesses that they work for.
Yeah, maybe.
And you go, I'll talk to Jared because Alex is scored highly or something. I don't know.
I can't think of any use cases for it, but possibly some really out there ideas that you could use AR. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, no idea. Can't even think of a crazy thing to do with it.
Oh, I'm sure there's people at ANZ coming up with ideas, believe me. But I think that's the thing with AR, right? It seems like a really cool technology. It's been around for ages. There's VR as well, and it maybe just hasn't got that traction yet. Maybe they'll need to release the platform before people actually realize what you can do with it. It's a little bit like the phone when it came out. I think a lot of people were like, yeah, that's cool. I actually thought it was really complicated, and I thought, there's no way my mum's going to be able to use this thing. And look at us now, We've got car interfaces that look like a phone. Any other questions? Yes, at the back. Oh, yeah, sure. Favorite API that got announced. Favorite API that got announced. Do you want to go
it's
first?
It's going to be pretty niche, but for us, the fact that they have set functions for CGPath, so you can unionize the sets, intersect them, subtract them, that's going to be really useful for us. So yeah, favorite API for sure.
I don't know if you consider this an API, but the Swift package plugin command.
That looked really cool.
Yeah, super interesting. I'm very keen to play around with that.
Anything to do with concurrency? I think all that new stuff is wonderful.
I'm not a developer anymore. I'm post-technical, but the distributed actor stuff sounds really exciting and scary because I come from an era where distributed things meant leaking memory everywhere. So yeah, I don't know. That sounds like a really cool thing. Like I can talk to another process like RPC, like in 2022.
So that's another node they've been trying to crack for like a good 15 years now. Like
they had distributed objects back at NextStep.
Yeah,
right.
The idea is not new, but they came up. First of all, like Darwin is based on Mac messages, which is a very powerful IPC system. For those who have never used it, it's from the 80s, so it's very rough to use. And on top of that, they developed a lot of other IPC mechanisms that are fairly simpler to use. And then they got XPC going, which they thought was the final solution, but XPC is also pretty annoying to use. They got NSXPC connection, which is again another abstraction on top of that. And I think with distributed actors, they finally cracked it because they got, again, it's the Apple formula, right? They control the whole stack. So from the kernel all the way to the language, they got all the pieces there to develop a great experience, to basically like not even realize you're talking to another daemon or to another server on the cloud or whatever else. I think the potential there is immense.
It's actually the culmination of a lot of groundwork that they've laid in language and
experience and learnings that they had. And finally, they got something that's like, okay, if you just combine the language support with the kernel support, with that ID, with all of that, we have something that's super powerful. And all you have to do is do a try, await, or whatever. And you do. This is a call that happens somewhere, somehow. You don't have to know, but this is a line of code. And I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
Not an API, but I think a lot of people were surprised about Driver Kit for iPad OS. Was that something people were like, wow, that will open up a lot of opportunities? I don't even know what that kind of would lead to.
And just to add something else, I've been really happy to hear that Swift has been ported to the Secure Enclave, and also bits of Foundation are now implemented in Swift. So even if you are 100% Objective-C app and you link against Foundation, you are a Swift app because underneath it all there's Swift. So they're finally executing on that idea of Swift being that language that runs from low-level, bare metal, embedded systems all the way to like app development. And that's something that they announced when Chris Latner went on stage and on Swift. But we haven't, we had high ideas about whether we should work or not. But it actually is happening right now. And we should all be really happy that the devices we work with or we have in our pockets and all that run more Swift because it's a more secure language. And we need to be able to move away from C, C++, and all these unsafe languages that are so very unproductive.
Error prone.
Only psychopaths write C++. That's always my opinion.
I thought you used to write C++.
Yeah, that's why. But Google, for example, for a few years had I've started developing this OS called Fuchsia, written mostly in Rust, and a lot of smart people have been working on it for years, and they have the right idea because it's obviously a Hail Mary. It's a long project, but they're getting there. I think they already have some devices that run Fuchsia rather than the Linux kernel. But if they get there, that's going to pay off handsomely because they're going to have a fairly powerful language that is safe and secure to write their whole stack. And Apple wasn't there yet. A lot of the low-level layers in Apple systems are still written in like C, C++, and Objective-C as well. And so finally to see that effort coming to fruition and finally getting, we're seeing Swift in these environments like, okay, they are getting there. And hopefully we're going to see Swift adopted internally by Apple and maybe other places as well, but by other teams. And by extension, things are going to be safer, faster, and also teams are going to be more productive. I mean, we all felt how much more productive we were by adopting Swift, hopefully. And so imagine someone that has to write C++ all day, again, I've been there. And now you are allowed to use Swift in that environment. Like, how happy are you? Like, we always talk about the fact that the Swift compiler engineers have to use C++ all day and how they are miserable on Twitter every day because they have to use C++, right? It's a common trope that they have. But what if they could use Swift? What if, again, the Darwin kernel engineers could use Swift? What if the firmware on your AirPods could run Swift? Like, everything would run better, I assume, and faster and safer, and features would come out faster. So this is something that's going to hopefully pay huge dividends down the line. So I'm very happy to hear that they're giving a sense of like Swift is starting to make its way down the stack as well. It's not just like this high-level language, and so I'm happy to see that.
So if you'd like to know more about the future of computing, feel free to join Renaud later for a beer, and he'll tell you more about it. We had one more question out the back there. That's a good question. I haven't watched the sessions yet. Megan, do you have any sense of that at all?
I hope it'll be easy, but I actually don't know if I can answer that question from a Seek perspective.
We had just watched the concurrency chat, so we didn't want to go back into another really complex one, but I'm really excited by it. I think it'll be quite easy to adopt. I'm really, really excited about this one in particular, especially the fact that it's a standard. We can use it everywhere. One of the best things I've seen this year. We do a lot of authentication work. Can't say if we're going to look at that one just yet. It solves a lot of the problems that we've already solved, so we'll see. But yeah, like I'm really excited. I would not say it's difficult for servers to implement that. So yeah, it's amazing.
It's going to require some coordination though, right? Between.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know about the browser support. Does Edge support it? Does, I don't know. I think there'll be some issues for a while.
But I think we all recognise it's probably one of the most significant announcements as well. Yeah, for just the way we use our computers and, finally being able to, log into my dad's accounts, just by saying, Dad, just press this and it will log you in, because he can never remember his password anyway.
Passwords are so difficult. We probably all do okay with passwords. There's so many people that don't. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Awesome. Hey, we might wrap it up there. Oh, sorry, that's a question. That's not 5-minute wrap-up call. Rob? From the Slacks. Okay, what have we got?
When do we think Siri will get some focus? It feels extremely subpar considering how much life it's had.
Okay, so when do we think Siri will sort of become useful? Is a summary, or have some TLC? And so what the commentary is that it's a bit lacking at the moment. Okay, it's been around a long time. Yeah, Kira, it looks like you want to say something.
Oh my god!
Microphone up to mouth already.
Okay. All these assistants and Google Assistant and Alexa and all of them are in the same boat where the marketing went ahead of the implementation. I don't know if it can be salvaged at this point. Everyone's been trained that these things are not good enough just yet and not worth your while. So I don't see how you can fix this one. If I was a product manager at Apple, I probably would not put in effort into that one.
Oof. Megan.
Yeah, it does seem like a bit of a cycle. Like it's just still not really there yet. It doesn't understand a lot of things that you ask it. And so I think like a lot of teams aren't really that motivated to contribute to, Siri shortcuts or whatever they need to get their products working with Siri. I guess
because if people's experience of it isn't good to start with, then they're probably not going to try and use your app's features using it.
Exactly.
If that makes any sense.
Exactly. It's funny though, because I actually use Siri a lot. My house is automated, so all of my, like when I'm lying in bed, I say turn my lights off. I absolutely love it. Everything else is still not that great, but if, depending on how you use it, it's still pretty good.
I think instead of Siri, you could have 3 buttons, right? Yeah. The lights, what's the weather, set a timer. That's all I want.
Any love for Siri, Renaud?
No, in my opinion, Siri and Echo and Google Assistant, all of these things, they're all the same. They just glorify kitchen timers.
I have to admit, that's the only thing I use it for. But there have been 1 or 2 occurrences where I've used it and I've been delighted and surprised, but it only takes one time for it just to have no clue about what you're talking about. It even comes on every now and then when I'm just talking normally. It's like, what are you doing? Barry.
Yeah, I'll give you an easy question.
Okay. Ooh, okay. So quick question, is Apple Maps now better than Google Maps?
We still haven't got the cycling stuff that they announced last year. I just checked a couple days ago, and I'm just still waiting for that. So no.
What I might ask is, in your car, Renaud, which map systems do you use?
Apple Maps is good enough.
Okay. Megan?
Not Apple Maps or Google Maps.
What, you use the Melways?
Well, actually, I guess, I use Google Maps. Google Maps. Yeah.
Google Maps.
Yeah.
Okay.
I use Google Maps in my car. First time I tried Apple Maps, I said navigate to Coles, and it took me to a town called Coles, 1,000 kilometres away. Then I turned it off.
I think that's a wrap for tonight, but thank you for joining me on the panel, the post-dub panel, Kira, Megan and Renaud. Hope it was an enjoyable experience, and thank you everybody for your questions.